I think what we borrowed from the JRPG genre is a lot of the gameplay.
From a camera angle perspective, from a world design perspective, from UI, like there's all these different pieces that are all coming together. When I think of JRPGs, I think of Nier Automata, because there was something about it, something about how they did the camera angles in the game, how they changed your perspective as you went around these worlds. The soundtrack was absolutely mind-blowing in my opinion. There was so many different things about it, right? And on top of that, I think Nier had a really, really passionate modding base. So there was things evolving outside of that even. So it was like this ecosystem that was just very, very engaging, and that was something that excited me about that side of the genre. For you, I guess the music in this game, right? Is that something that is kind of front and center as you're starting to create this world and build it out, or is that something that's kind of going to come later to fit into the world you're building?
When I set out to build this world, every aspect of it, I wanted to feel immersive. You know, there's attention paid to sound effects, there's attention paid to music, there's attention paid to the way sound effects are implemented. So yeah, definitely music is one of the front and center pieces, and the two guys I have working on the music, one of them's a friend of mine we've been friends for 15, 18 years, something like that, and he's fantastic, and the other guy I met just a year or two ago, and he's fantastic as well, and they're both really great to work with. And so yeah, the music I think it's going to be fun for people to listen to.
But then when I look at the description for your game, I saw that this game is inspired by Celtic Folklore, but it's also a JRPG. Those are two very distinct cultures, and they're two very distinct styles, and even the music, again, circling back, is very different as well. So how do you blend those two things together, right?
I think what we borrowed from the JRPG genre is a lot of the gameplay, right? Like the battle systems, the more crunchy battles and customizations, and what we're borrowing from the Celtic backgrounds are more of the lore, right? Like the creatures, the mannerisms, the environments, that kind of stuff.
I see.
And then for the music, we're being inspired by more traditional Celtic music. There's a lot of fiddle work, a lot of Irish flute. It feels really unique, and it feels really good so far.
But for you specifically, when you're creating a JRPG, but then it's also this pixelated world, from a camera angle perspective, from a world design perspective, from UI, there's all these different pieces that are all coming together. When you're looking at that on a macro level, how do you blend all that successfully into one cohesive game?
Yeah, it's really tricky, right? Because we started out very first discussions I started having with Tim, the creative director, was how big are the tiles going to be? I was I don't know. And I said a number.
Big.
He's like,
yeah.
He was like, no.
I see.
It's not. He's like, I wouldn't go any bigger than 32. I was like, oh, okay. And then we had to think about it, because the game's going to be released on Steam, but I also it's going to release on Switch and hopefully PlayStation, Xbox. But think about the Switch. It's got a small screen. If you're handheld, so you've got some limitations there. It's a trick, right? And in those types of games where you're kind of top down or whatever, you don't see the sky. So you've got to do tricks to do that. So we've got a couple scenes where we've got a hilltop and a panorama, and you can see the sky, and so you can do kind of directional, not left right, but as a director you can
have it pan up,
do little tricks to pan up to make it look like you're looking up to the sky or something like that, and get a sense of the world and a little bit of scale.
And for you specifically with this engine, you mentioned it's in Unity, but you also have, when we had talked previously about this game, you have this template system that overlays on top of your Unity engine to help you kind of expedite your process, correct? So walk me through how that works and what it does for this game specifically, and the team who works within it.
These guys build the framework, right? It's the guys that are working on this, they built it. So it is specifically for JRPG style games. So it does things like it takes tiled maps from a program called Tiled. We can just kind of use them directly, which is great because then we can set up pipelines and templates in those tools so that the rest of the team, it facilitates their work, right?
Yeah.
So like when we're building a map, there's a template that we follow. Like how do you do depth sorting? How do you do layering of different things? How do you do object collision and that kind of stuff? So that's all figured out and set up in these templates. And then the system framework in Unity, it understands how to use all of that stuff. It's almost like a multiplier on top of stuff to get things done. The same with audio, right? Like, and that's true, I think, of most JRPG style games. Like JRPGs, is like there's so much work up front to get something that looks like it works and that you can actually use. You can't just have one character, right? Like you have to come up with a whole, like, okay, how do you animate? We have to have a framework for animation, right? How do you, the battle system, what are you going to do? Like, how do you get that started?
I'm sure you're going to publish this game in China. Publishing in China and even in Asia is different than publishing in the West. So how do you approach that?
In terms of publishing, at some point, probably I'm going to have to work with a publisher for these specific regions.
Yeah.
Anyway, or maybe one publisher who kind of does many different regions. Because it is totally, foreign to me. Like the US audience, like fine, like I grew up in the US, so I understand that. But when it comes to like the Chinese audience, because they have their whole own ecosystem.
Yep, exactly.
They do. So I don't know where to look for that or how to get the word out there or anything like that. So I think you have to rely on folks who know what they're doing and kind of loop them in on things.
I see.
Because otherwise you're going to spend so much time just trying to figure it out and learn and you'll drop things along the way that you should have been focusing on.
And ultimately, if you give it to somebody who understands the market and understands the culture, no matter how much time you put into it, they're probably going to be able to do it a little bit better if they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's just more efficient.
And they're probably going to have a team of people who are local to that area.
Talk to me about the game itself, right? So Forge of the Fae, talk to me about the gameplay, talk to me about the story, how this game is built, and what players should expect as they go into this game.
Obviously, it's a JRPG style game. It's sort of like, 3/4 view, a traditional kind of look and feel. In terms of gameplay, you're going to get a lot of what you're familiar with and some new stuff. There's a mix of things in there, but we want it to be engaging. We want it to be fun. We want there to be, puzzles and problem solving, and we wanted it to be sort of a story first in a game. And then in terms of combat, we've got a couple of really unique systems that you can do. There's a lot of interesting customizations that players will be able to mess with and explore, and there should be enough of that players will get a slightly different experience the way they kind of choose to approach things, right? And then of course we just want to build this kind of beautiful world that people can go back through and find little paths that they didn't notice before, or different parts of the world are unlocked and they can just get deeper into the segment of the world that we've created.
You mentioned this game has a very, very rich story in it. So when I think of a game that has a lot of story in it, I think of a lot of text, right? And with a game, especially JRPG, there's a localization element to it. Localization is its own beast. There's a lot that goes into it. So when you think of localization, how are you making that easier right now so that it's streamlined in the long run? Because you've been streamlining a lot of stuff for this game. I'd imagine you kind of had that in the back of your mind as well, too.
We're trying not to overbear people with text. Like that's one of the things that immediately comes up. You're like, well, it's a story-rich game, so there must be a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And we're trying to not do that, right? We're trying to use what we have for direction to tell the story. There's systems in place that we have for going through and getting the text away from the actual game so that it can be localized. And then, there's someone I've been chatting with here in Japan who does localization for kind of similar games. I mean, it's just a huge process, right? Like you have to know the context of what, is being said in the game.
Exactly.
So, as much as you can put little notes into the actual script for people to read, these little notes are never going to make it into like the dialogue boxes or anything like that. But having the scenes kind of printed out in a way, right? Like, so your instructions for the scene are there with your text.
Yeah.
So that way you can kind of see what's happening. You can kind of imagine what's happening. And then I think these guys that do localization for a living, they just play the game over and over and over again.
You said you made a Japanese Twitter for this game, right? What is a Japanese Twitter? Is that different from this one, from like your regular Twitter, or how does that, or is just all the writing in Japanese and you're pushing it in that direction? Like, how does that work?
Again, like, I'm not a marketing guy, so I was like, there's been a lot of interest in the game in the US and in Europe. English-speaking interest on Twitter. It'd be great to start announcing this game a little bit in Japan, since I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm in the right time zone anyway.
Yeah.
So I was like, do I simply create Japanese language posts on the main Twitter account? Or do I create a new Twitter account, which is based in Japan? And so I was like, I'll do the latter, right? So it's like a separate Twitter account, and it has like the katakana version of Forge of the Fae, which is basically translates to Forge of Fae. And what I've been doing is when I created a post, I would do it in English first, and then a buddy of mine here who does localization, he would go through it and create the Japanese version of that post. And then I would just kind of copy paste that out to the Twitter account.
So with this game, I think we have to talk about Japan, right? You're in Japan. That is a JRPG. We got to talk about Japan as a country right now. And I want to lead off because I wanted to ask you this on our prep call. This is a fascinating question. My girlfriend was trying to hold up a little sign as I was talking to you. She was like, ask him about the 7-Elevens. And I couldn't see it, so I didn't ask her on the prep call. But I want to ask you right now because I love the question, right? I see YouTube videos all the time where like the 7-Elevens are just mind-blowing in Japan and South Korea and stuff. And I'm like, are they really that good? Or is it just YouTube like putting this like golden, glow over everything? And it's like, it's all fake. If you're there, are they as awesome as they look?
Pretty great.
They're
gotta say.
all right.
Yeah. So the way they're pretty great. The way, especially compared to 7-Elevens in the States.
Yeah.
Especially compared to 7-Elevens in the States.
Yeah.
So the 7-Elevens here are owned by Seven Holdings, and so it's a Japanese company. So they have, I think, a lot of flexibility to turn it into a convenience store that's really targeted at the Japanese demographic.
I see.
So that makes it like very competitive as a convenience store. So you can go in there and you can kind of live off of this store, these convenience stores like Family Mart and 7-Eleven and Lawson's and you go in, you can get a sandwich, you can get a hot dog, you can get a drink, you can pay your bills. You can, which is crazy because I pay my bills at 7-Eleven.
That's wild.
They just have a huge variety of stuff, but they have only one or two of each thing. So, but they're always decent quality. So like if you need to get like a small if you need to buy like a small pen and paper, like it's there, right? Like the stores are not huge. Yeah. They just kind of have everything, and the quality is so high.
Here's my thing. If I went to any gas station in the US, right? I remember when I was younger, I went to like a BP or something, and I was really hungry one night, and I got, I think, sushi, which is like, you never get sushi from a gas station in the US, ever.
That's rough.
And I did it, yeah, and I paid the price for it. And then I see all these videos later in life, and I'm like, wow, like, other countries, they do it right. Japan, they're doing it right. Like they know what's up. And then you come to like, you go at the gas station down the road here, and you're like, what is happening in the world? Like, so it's an interesting.
Yeah, we were visiting friends and family in the States over the summer, and we had to go into I can't remember why we had to go to a 7-Eleven. And I was like, oh, I forgot.
Not quite the same experience. Yeah. And then on top of that comparison, staying in that same trend of thought. Well, I guess not, because it's not gas stations, or it's not even a gas station there. It's a convenience store. But anime in the US and manga. Anime and manga in the US versus anime and manga in the East, in South Korea and Japan. I feel like the bases are really passionate, but I feel like they're passionate in different ways, right? I feel like in the US, it's like an obsession, and it's an odd obsession to me because I'm on the outside of it. Again, I said Avatar was an anime, so I've officially, my anime card has been revoked completely. But like, it's different, and I feel like because you're in Japan, you can shed a better light on that. Like, what do you see, right? Like, how do those two compare to each other?
There's definitely, big fans in both places. There's more hype about things in the US. Here, there's a ton of saturation of like anime and manga, and so people are excited when new episodes come out, and there is like that commonality there. But I think in the US, the saturation isn't quite as high, so people get more hyped about stuff, right? So and it's sometimes hard to get content So there's animes that are never translated to English. So people are like kind of on the edge of their seats or whatever. And here it's more like very prevalent. Like there's physical posters that get hung up, even in the trains. So like there's like numbered places for physical posters above the seats and kind of in between the aisles. And, you'll see anime posters there all the time.
What about the shows, right? Because when I think of like anime in the US, I think of like, and again, this is outsider, but I think of like Netflix where it's like Hunter x Hunter and like Kill la Kill and stuff like that. Like I feel like they're more built for Western audiences, right? They're built, I don't know, maybe I'm dead wrong there, but I feel like they're more built for Western audiences as opposed to Japan, where I have no idea what is the most popular animes there. But are they watching different stuff, you think? Like
the really popular stuff tends to be the stuff that gets brought over to the US. So like when I was in the US,
we're getting the leftovers.
Yeah, well, that's how it is.
Yep. No.
It is sort of like the most popular stuff that does get brought over, because if it's popular here, they then have the budget to do like the localization, right? So, for example, when I was in the States, my nephews, they would watch One Piece for hours, every day. And I was like, I was at their place, and I was, working during the day, at my full-time job, and I can hear like the screaming in the background. I was like, oh, I'm watching One Piece. And then when I got back to Japan, because they're still making new episodes of One Piece, and I was like, isn't that from the 90s? Like, have they been making episodes for over 20 years? And I think the answer is yes. They just have been. And so when I got back to Japan, we had gone out to a mall or something like that, and then so we were having dinner, and a couple restaurants down. This is inside of a mall, right? So you're dining, a little bit of an outdoor area, but there was a bar, and the TV was on, and people were sitting there, and it's One Piece. They're watching new episodes of One Piece.
That's awesome. Okay,
40-year-old men just sitting there drinking beer, watching One Piece,
just hanging out.
Cool. All right.
No, that's interesting. So again, that's another, actually, you raised a great point. Another reason that I've struggled to get into anime is because there are shows that have been around since like the 90s, like Bleach. I remember I think I was in high school and somebody was telling me about Bleach, and they're like, oh, it's such a good show, you need to watch it. Like, I don't know. I don't really watch anime. Like, what's it about? They kind of gave me like, Cliff Notes or whatever.
It's hard to describe it.
So and then I was like, well, how long is it? And they're like, oh, there's like 300 episodes or something, or like 20 seasons. It's like an insane amount of content. And I was like, I could never watch all of that. Like, that is a massive
Nobody got time for that.
No, like, it's so much stuff. But then there's like the reverse side of the coin, right? Where there's like a good anime, but then there's only like 8 episodes of one season, and then it's gone forever. So it's like there's no in between, and I don't know. And then again, circling back to Yu-Gi-Oh, as a kid, I loved Yu-Gi-Oh, and then I tried to rewatch it again a couple of years back. I bought the whole set, right, for all the seasons. I was really excited about it. I sat down, and I got like 3 seasons in, and I was like, wait, this is the exact same episode over and over again, like the exact same plot, everything happens the same. And I was like, my whole childhood has just been shattered completely, and I haven't watched it since.
Yeah,
it's tragic.
I like to think that we grow in sophistication in our tastes as we get older.
Maybe.
I do remember that experience too, where I was like, I don't remember what it was. It was some anime, and I started watching a few episodes as an adult.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember this being really cool when I was like in like 9th grade.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is cringy. Like, I can't watch this.
No. Same thing.
So yeah.
Sometimes.
But then there are some really good ones that have aged really well. Like there's, you might like this. It's called Mushishi.
Okay.
It's super chill. There's 20 episodes or something like that. Every episode is its own kind of. They've built the world. They've built the lore, and every episode is a self-contained thing. So there are little bits that grow between one episode and the other. It's subtle, right? So like you can kind of watch them in a little bit of any order, but it's a really chill anime. That's a good one.
Maybe I'll check it out. My daughter watched this anime called Little Witch Academia. I think it's an anime.
My daughter loves that one.
Yeah. Okay. And I found myself like really, really getting into it with her. She'd be watching it. I'd sit down and watch it with her, and she'd be like, all right, I'm going to switch you, watch something else. Like, well, let's watch one more episode, right? Like, let's just see what happens here. This is like, I'm watching this show, and I'm like, I'm fully engaged in it. This is pretty cool. So I don't know. Maybe I'll have to give
next on your playlist, like My Little Pony, like, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The story.
How old is your daughter?
She's 7. She's 7,
Okay, yeah,
and
yeah.
she loves it. Like she loves anime. She's into Pokemon. She's into all that stuff. So like, it's in the family. I just maybe it's my time, right? Maybe I need to start branching out and doing more things, in the anime spectrum. I don't know. So that's really everything I could think of with this game, except for your roadmap moving forward, right? Because you're still a little ways out from your release at this point. Talk to me about 2024. Kind of what is in store next year for this game when we're looking long-term wise.
Sure. Like what we're working on now is public demo for the game. And so what we did is we sort of created this vertical slice of the story. I'd love to have that out before the end of the year so that we could get people playing it and early into next year and get people's feedback and that kind of stuff. And then, once we get that released and it's, looking pretty good, we're going to be moving into production, which means we're ramping up things, getting people working more hours like on stuff and really pumping through things. And that'll be the start to our production cycle. And I'm really hoping, I'm not going to promise anything, of course, but I'm really hoping that we could have the final version of the game playable and available by the end of 2025.
Okay, I got you.
So that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I would love for us to meet that. It's still pretty early right now, but that's my personal target there.
So 2024, the year of no sleep for you then, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. All right, perfect. That's all we need then.